Hello again, Colin Brown, licensing instructor and licensed real estate broker here in the Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina. Hope you're doing well. This is the third video in the series of disclosures that are required in residential sales transactions in our state. The first one that we looked at was the RPODS, Residential Property Owners and Association Disclosure Statement. That's the seller's disclosure. Then we looked at the mineral oil and gas rights, the MOG, and today we're looking at the lead-based paint addendum. This one is not required in every single transaction, only for properties that are built prior to 1978. And so if the property was built before then, this absolutely is required. If you're working with sellers, this is a document you're going to need to be able to explain to them. Sellers, you're going to need to ask for this. Buyers, you're going to need to make sure that this is received from the seller's side of a transaction because this needs to be included no matter what. So let's take a closer look at it and see exactly what our role as agents will be in helping to fill this out. So if you look at the disclosure, you'll see the seller's portion is there first. Presence of lead-based paint. That's the first question. Is there lead-based paint? The first one says, the first checkbox says, known lead-based paint is present. So the seller is saying, yes, we are aware that there is lead-based paint in this house. The second box says, seller has no knowledge of lead-based paint or hazards in the house. That does not mean that there definitely are not any lead-based paint hazards in this property. What it says is the seller has no knowledge. It's one of those to the best of our knowledge answers, right? So if a buyer does their due diligence, they have the house tested, and the seller checked this box, and you find that there's lead-based paint in the house, the seller still can't be held liable at all. It's a buyer beware state, so the buyer's required to do their diligence in finding whatever they can find. And the seller is basically basing their answers off of what they are currently aware of. The second question under item B, records and reports. So if the seller has records, reports of lead-based paint, or they have had remediation done to remove it, then they can provide those reports. If they have no reports, then it's going to be the second checkbox. The sellers will initial these two items, items A and B. When a buyer is submitting an offer on a property, in addition to the offer and the other disclosures that are required, they'll include this one, and they need to initial all three of items C, D, and E. Buyer acknowledging that they have received this document and they have checked off what the seller has chosen. And if there are records or reports, the buyers acknowledge that they have received those and have reviewed them. Item D says they have received the pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. That is a production of the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. It is available on their website, ncrec.gov. And then the last one, the buyer is either accepting or waiving the opportunity to conduct lead-based risk assessments, to have the property tested. So the first box says, yes, we would like to have it tested, and the second box says, no, we're not going to worry about it. Buyer must initial all three of those. As always, if there are multiple buyers, they all must show up on there. On page 2, you will see that the buyer and seller both sign. At the very top, you'll see an agent acknowledgement. So the seller's agent, the listing agent, needs to initial there, stating that they have explained to their seller this requirement. And then as we go further down, this is one of the few documents that requires all involved parties in the transaction to sign. So the buyer signs, the seller signs. Of course, if it's an LLC, a company on either side, the approved representative is going to sign. And then also the buyer's agent and the listing agent sign on page 2, because all of us are required to inform all of our parties that this is a requirement. So, and by the way, I know those of you that are in the real estate class, the pre-license class right now, selling agent is the buyer's agent. I know it bothers me too. It sounds like it should be the seller's agent, but you have listing agent is the seller's agent, selling agent is the buyer's agent. All right, So that was your quick 5 minutes on the lead-based paint addendum. There will be more videos to come, so stay tuned. Thanks for joining me.